Hello everyone, welcome back to your own channel Our Past by Priya Jha. Today we are going to continue a very important topic in modern Indian history, that is the revolt of 1857 under this part 2 of the video. But before watching the video, I would like to request all of you to visit my channel and watch part 1 of the video of the topic the revolt of 1857 in order to understand the topic better. For your suitability, I have provided the link in the description box of part 1. So friends, let's continue. Well, in part 1, we covered the subtopics such as major causes of the revolt and beginning and spread of the revolt, symbolic head of the revolt and role of the civilians. So today in this video we are going to learn about storm centers and leaders of the revolt, suppression of the revolt, reasons behind the failure, nature of the revolt, consequences of the revolt and significance of the revolt. So we have covered the whole topic, the revolt of 1857, under these two videos. These are very elaborated videos and will give you a complete picture of the topic. So I am again requesting all of you to watch both the videos in order to learn the topic properly. So friends, what were the storm centers and who were the leaders of the revolt? We know that the symbolic head of the revolt was last Mughal king Bahadur Shah Zafar. But the real leaders were many. So let's learn about them one by one. Well friends, in Delhi, as Delhi was the center of the revolt, the nominal and symbolic leadership lied in the hands of Bahadur Shah Zafar. But important names involved in this revolt are, first one is General Bakht Khan. He headed the court of soldiers. He led the revolt of Bareilly troops and brought them to Delhi. So he brought Bareilly troops to Delhi, as Delhi was the main center. The court consisted of 10 members, out of which 6 were army personnel and 4 were civilians. And the court conducted the affairs of the state in the name of the emperor. So he was working, the court was working in the name of the emperor. Next, this Bahadur Shah, we all know that he was the weakest link, weak personality, had old age, lacked leadership qualities. He created political weakness at the nerve center of the revolt and did incalculable damage to it. So instead of providing the revolt a strong hand, what he did damage to the revolt. Now friends, there were few other storm centers such as Kanpur, Lucknow, Bareilly, Bihar, Faizabad, Jhansi. So let's read about them one by one. In Kanpur, Nana Sahib, who was the adopted son of last Peshwa Bajirao II, he was refused by this family title and he banished from Pune and was living near Kanpur. So Nana Sahib expelled the English from Kanpur in earlier stages of the revolt. So he was leading from Kanpur, and in Lucknow the rebellion broke out on June 4, 1857 and Begum Hazrat Mahal took over the reins at Lucknow. So Begum Hazrat Mahal was leader from Lucknow. Then in Bareilly, Khan Bahadur, a descendant of the former ruler of Rohilkhand, was placed in command. Not enthusiastic about the pension being granted by the British, he organized an army of 40,000 soldiers and offered stiff resistance to the British. In Bihar, the revolt was led by Kunwar Singh And in Faizabad, Maulvi Ahmadullah of Faizabad was another outstanding leader of the revolt. He was a native of Madras and had moved to Faizabad in the north, where he fought a stiff battle against the British troops. So we can see that from Kanpur, Nana Sahib, from Lucknow, Begum Hazrat Mahal, from Bareilly, Khan Bahadur, from Bihar, Kunwar Singh, and from Faizabad, Maulvi Ahmadullah served as the leaders. Now friends, there were other centers, other main centers. One important place being Jhansi. We all are aware of Jhansi ki Rani Ranilaxmibai. So what was her role? The most outstanding leader of the revolt was Rani Lakshmibai, who assumed the leadership of the sepoys at Jhansi. Lord Dalhousie, the Governor General, had refused to allow her adopted son to succeed to the throne after her husband Raja Gangadhar Rao died and had annexed the state by the application of the infamous doctrine of lapse. So we all know what doctrine of lapse policy was. In case the heir was not present, the territory went to the Britishers. So under the same policy, Lord Dalhousie had refused her adopted son to succeed to the throne, and after death of her husband, so Rani Lakshmibai, driven out of Jhansi by British forces, she gave the battle cry, मैं अपनी झांसी नहीं दूंगी. So this was her lines, I shall not give away my Jhansi. So she fought brilliantly, a very famous national leader, national fighter who fought for the rights. So an important name being Tantiatope, he supported Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi. She was joined by Tantiatope, a close associate of Nana Sahib, after the loss of Kanpur, and the Rani of Jhansi, Rani Lakshmibai, and Tantiatope marched towards Gwalior, where they were hailed by the Indian soldiers. The Scindias, who were the local ruler, however, decided to side with the English and took shelter at Agra. So they supported English. We will, in later part of the video, we will see that due to the absence of all India contribution, the revolt failed. The very first attempt against the Britishers failed miserably because no all India unity was there. So in the same way, the Scindia decided to side with the English and took shelter at Agra. Nana Sahib was proclaimed the Peshwa and plans were chalked out for march into the south. Gwalior was recaptured by the English in the month June 1858. Well, we have learnt about leaders from different places like Kanpur, Bihar, Bareilly, Jhansi. So, the sacrifices made by the common masses were immense and innumerable. The name of Shah Mahal, a very important role as far as the revolt of 1857 is concerned. The name of Shah Mahal, a local villager in Pargana Bharat, this modern day Bagpat, is most notable. He organized the headmen and peasants of the 84 villages referred as Chaurasi Desh. Well, 84 is read out as Chaurasi in Hindi. So these were referred as Chaurasi Desh, marching at night from village to village, urging people to rebel against the British hegemony. The people attacked government buildings, destroyed the bridges over the rivers and dug up metal roads. Well, why the metal roads were dug? Because partially they wanted to stop the government forces from coming into the area, and one reason was that bridges and roads, all the development things, were viewed as symbols of British rule. So in order to show their discontentment against the rule, they started destroying the metal roads, started digging up the metal roads. In July 1857, Shahmal was killed by an English officer, Dunlap. So Dunlap was an English officer who killed Shahmal. It is alleged that Shahmal's body was cut into pieces and his head displayed on July 21st, 1857 in order to terrify the public. So these were the steps taken to counter the revolt, to counter the activities that were going on in different places of the country. So friends, let's learn about the suppression of the revolt. How the British succeeded in suppressing the revolt. Well friends, on September 20, 1857, the British captured Delhi after prolonged and bitter fighting. John Nicholson, the leader of the siege, was badly wounded and later he succumbed to his injury. So maybe it may be taken as a retaliation by the Britishers or the way of reverting back. So many British leaders were also badly injured, many died. John Nicholson was one of them. The royal princes at India were captured and butchered on the spot, publicly shot at point blank range by Lieutenant Hudson himself. So what he did, he captured and butchered on the spot many royal princes. The emperor, which emperor we are talking about? We are talking about Bahadur Shah Zafar. Bahadur Shah was exiled to Rangoon. He was weak, he was old. He died there in 1862, and with the death of the last ruler, the Mughal Empire completely ended, and with the fall of Delhi, which was the focal point, the main center of the revolt, with the fall of Delhi, the revolt also disappeared. So they attacked in the main core region or the center of the revolt. One by one, all the great leaders which we talked about, they started falling. Let's see. Military operations of the recapture of Kanpur were closely associated with the recovery of Lucknow. Sir Colin Campbell occupied Kanpur December 6, 1857. So Kanpur was occupied in the month of December. Nana Sahib, who got defeated at Kanpur, he escaped to Nepal in early 1859. So we can see the revolt began in the year 1857. By 1859, Nana Sahib escaped to Nepal. He was nowhere to be found later on. The Rani of Jhansi had died on the battlefield in July 1858. So she died in 1858. Nana Sahib escaped to Nepal in 1859. Tantiatope escaped into the jungles of central India but was captured while asleep, and in the month of April 1859, and later he was also put to death. By 1859, Kunwar Singh, Bakht Khan, Khan Bahadur Khan of Bareilly, Rao Sahib, who was brother of Nana Sahib, and Maulvi Ahmadullah. So all these leaders, slowly and gradually, they were all dead, while the Begum of Awadh was compelled to hide in Nepal. So by the end of 1859, that is from 1857 to 1859, in the 2-year period, British authority over India was fully re-established. All these leaders were killed or they escaped by themselves, and again the British authority was fully re-established in the country by the end of 1859, that is in these 2 years. So on screen you can see Tantiatope and ranilaxmibai, who fought for their rights very strongly and they retaliated against the company. So well friends, let's discuss about the reasons why the revolt failed. What were the reasons why the revolt, the first action taken against the Britishers, failed miserably? The first and the most important reason being all India participation was absent. As I told you earlier, all India participation was not there. The southern part, the western or the eastern part did partially, the eastern and western part, though they were involved, but then their contribution could not be seen in the revolt. Many princes or many rulers were against the revolt because they thought that their rights were more protected under the British rule. British rule was not established by this time, but under the company, their favors were more supported, so they did not participate in the revolt. All classes did not join. Poor arms and equipment, while the Indian sepoys, they were using swords and spears. Very few had guns. When we talk about the British army, they were very tech savvy. They were technologically equipped. They had guns and they had scientific equipments like a telegraph with which their leader could address the whole troop. These things were lacking with the Indian military. Uncoordinated and poorly organized, there was no coordination or proper coordination, maybe because of the weak leadership. No single leader was there and no unified ideology was there. By this time, by the year 1857, the modern nationalism, nobody knew about what nationalism was. So we can say that it sowed the seeds of nationalism in the country, but by this time, these things were absent from the country. So we had no unified ideology. Because of these very few reasons, the revolt failed. But though the revolt failed, there is significance of everything that happens. So let's discuss. Well, first let's discuss about the nature of the revolt. Well, various historians have different viewpoints. Some see it in the favor of the country, or some are with the support of the Britishers, but let's discuss about the nature of the revolt and the views of various historians. Well, according to R.C. Majumdar and S.N. Sen, it was not an organized national revolt. In the view of V.D. Savarkar, it was a war of independence. In the view of Eric Stokes, it was elitist in character. Lawrence and Seeley are of the view that it was mere sepoy mutiny and no contribution from other classes like civilians and so was there. In the view of James Outram, it was a Mohammedan conspiracy making capital of Hindu grievances. So as we know, the company, the British always supported, always played by playing with the religion practiced by the citizens of the country, by taking help of the policy of divide and rule. So James Outram was in a support of fact that it was a Mohammedan conspiracy making capital of Hindu grievances. So we can conclude that it was not like the first war of independence, but it sowed the seeds of nationalism, the what we call modern nationalism and quest for freedom from the alien rule. So this was the contribution of the revolt. Now, what were the consequences of the revolt? Well, friends, in August 1858, an act for the better government of India was passed, which declared Queen Victoria as the sovereign of British India. The direct responsibility for the administration of the country was assumed by the British Crown and company rule was abolished. So in the year 1858, the company rule was abolished and the responsibility for the administration went directly to the British government as by the declaration by the British government. As per the Queen's proclamation, the era of annexations and expansion had ended and the British promised to respect the dignity and rights of the native princes. The army was thoroughly reorganized. The Indian sepoys were removed from the army. The Britishers were getting more entered in the army. The position of the heads was given to the British men instead of the Indians. The Army Amalgamation Scheme 1861 moved the company's European troops to the services of the crown. Till the first decade of the 20th century, no Indian was thought fit to deserve the king's commission, and a new English recruit was considered superior to an Indian officer holding the viceroy's commission. So, for these posts, the higher posts, the Indians were not considered good or not considered appropriate. The earliest reformist zeal of a self-confident Victorian liberalism, the promises they made earlier that the dignity of the countrymen will be protected, the Victorian liberalism evaporated as many liberal in Britain. They began to believe that Indians were beyond reform and the Britishers were superior and the Indians were not cultured people or quite a kind of backward people which were born to be ruled by a superior power. The conservative reaction in England made the British Empire in India more autocratic. So this reaction made the empire here autocratic, and it began to deny the aspirations of the educated Indians for sharing power, which also affected the middle class. And when the middle class of the country turned active after the war, the revolt of 1857, it led to the country in different direction. The policy of divide and rule started in earnest after the revolt of 1857. So they, as introducing the Royal Enfield gun, and they started their things with the introduction of these guns, and when they understood that their things are getting done by this policy, so they started sticking to the policy and implementing it wherever possible. Territorial conquest. So though territorial conquest was at an end, and a period of systematic economic loot by the British began. The territorial conquest ended because the country was completely under the British rule, and also the rule of the company, the East India Company, was abolished. The Indians were directly under the rule of Britishers. So the systematic economic loot, an era of systematic economic loot began, and territorial conquest ended completely. Racial hatred and suspicion between the Indians and the English was probably the worst legacy of the revolt. They started believing in the fact that whites were more superior to the Indians. Now, friends, so far we learned about the nature of the revolt, the centers, the leaders, and the consequences of the revolt. But the revolt had significance, of course, for the Britishers. Few significant points was there for the Indians too. Let's see. For the British, they showed it, the revolt of 1857 showed them their shortcomings in their administration and their army, which they rectified promptly, and it helped them to establish a rule in the country in later stages. And for the Indians, what was the significance? Well, there was lot of significance of the revolt of 1857. It brought out in the open grievances of people and sepoys, what the countrymen and the military men were going through in their own country. It gave rise to modern nationalism. More aware middle class was there when they understood that their rights were completely getting destroyed, getting finished under the British rule. They established local traditions of resistance to the revolt of 1857, established local traditions of resistance to British rule, which were to be of help in the course of the national struggle for freedom after 1857 to 1947. In these years, the rise of the belief that we were being governed by a foreign rule. So the rise of this belief was provided by the revolt of 1857. So friends, here the video ends. As I am telling you again and again that I have covered this topic under 2 parts. So please watch both the videos. You will learn the topic in a very nice and easy manner. And after watching both the videos, you are requested to attend a 5 marks Google form quiz. The link is provided in the description box. A very few 5 questions are there constituting 1 marks each. So please open the Google form, enter your email ID and write your name. Please give this quiz to learn about what you have learned so far from watching the videos, and you will get to know your marks quickly. So if you like the video, please give it a big thumbs up. Comment on the video if you want a separate video to be made on any history topic. Share the video with your friends and please subscribe to my channel for more such interesting videos on history. Bye bye.